The sky over Allenton was a shade of gray that made everything feel heavier. Street lamps flickered, windshield wipers hissed across quiet roads, and the cold drizzle blurred outlines of buildings. At 8:04 a.m., the automatic doors of the 6th precinct slid open, and in walked Maya Jenkins. She was drenched, her hoodie clinging to her back, jeans darkened by the rain. She moved with urgency, not fear. In her hands, tightly wrapped in plastic and sealed with duct tape, was a brown envelope, one she hadn't let go of since leaving her apartment an hour earlier. The officer at the front desk barely looked up. "Can I help you?" Maya nodded, her voice low. "I need to speak with someone in charge. I have evidence about an ongoing case." That sentence alone should have set off alarms. But it didn't. Officer Lila Grant blinked, unsure. "What kind of case?" "Corruption," Maya whispered. "Police corruption. Someone's been covering up something. Someone died because of it." There was a pause. Lila's fingers hovered over her keyboard, hesitation in her eyes. "Do you have a name?" Maya looked around, leaned in. "Detective Aiden Ross. He said to come here. Told me someone would protect me." Lila blinked. "Detective Ross isn't in today." Maya's face drained of color. "What?" "He told me, no, I spoke to him. He said to come first thing today." Lila hesitated again. "Hold on. Let me check with someone." She buzzed the inner door. Another officer appeared, young, tall, buzzed hair, badge barely hanging on his chest. Officer Kenny Doyle. He looked at Maya, nodded, then motioned her through the door. The footage showed Maya following him down the hallway. That was it. No footage ever showed her leaving. No body. No evidence. No answers. The clock ticked. Hours passed. And by the time anyone realized she hadn't left, Maya Jenkins had vanished without a trace. Detective Aiden Ross wasn't a man easily rattled. He'd buried partners, testified against friends, and worn a bullet in his left shoulder for 10 years without ever complaining. But when his phone rang that afternoon and he heard Maya Jenkins' name, something in his gut twisted. "Aiden," came the voice of Officer Lila Grant, low and uncertain, "there's something you should see." He was already on edge. Maya had reached out to him 2 nights ago, claiming to have information about a death the department had ruled accidental, a young man named Darius Fields, found shot in the back alley behind a liquor store. No suspects. No real effort. Another statistic in a low-income neighborhood. But Maya had sounded scared. Not paranoid, not dramatic, scared. She said she had proof someone tampered with the investigation. She said someone inside the department helped bury it. So Aiden told her to meet him at the station. 8 a.m. sharp. He'd protect her. Only now, Lila was saying Maya had already been there. "She showed up this morning?" he asked, heart racing. "She walked in. Had something with her, said you told her to come. I told her you weren't in yet. Kenny took her to the back. After that." "After that what?" "She never came out." He was silent. "Are you saying she's still here?" "No," Lila said slowly. "We've checked every room. She's not in the building. But she's not on any footage leaving either." Aiden's jaw tightened. "Pull the security feed. I'm on my way." By 4:27 p.m., Aiden was in the security room, eyes glued to the screen. There she was, Maya Jenkins, dripping wet, clutching that strange, wrapped envelope. Her face was tired. Her eyes determined. She didn't look like someone on the run. She looked like someone trying to do the right thing. The footage showed her talking to Lila, then being escorted by Officer Kenny Doyle. After that? Nothing. "Where's the rest?" Aiden asked, his voice sharp. "That's it," the tech replied. "The hallway camera cuts out. System glitched right after 8:10 a.m. "Glitched?" Aiden repeated. The tech shrugged. "Hard drive restart. We lost about 15 minutes of footage from that wing." Aiden didn't believe in coincidences. He rewound again, watching Kenny Doyle's body language too relaxed, too familiar. Like this wasn't unexpected. "Where's Doyle?" he asked. "Went off shift early. Said he wasn't feeling well." Where does he live? The tech blinked. Sir, is this official? Aiden stood up. It is now. He was no longer watching security footage. He was watching the start of a cover-up. And it had already begun. Aiden Ross didn't go home that night. He didn't call it in. He didn't file a report. Because deep down, he knew, if someone in that building made Maya disappear, trusting the chain of command could cost him more than his badge. It could cost her life. Or his. Officer Kenny Doyle lived in a modest duplex on the east side of Ellenton. Aiden parked a few houses down, killed the lights, and waited. He didn't need a warrant, not yet. He wasn't knocking. He just needed to see something that didn't sit right. At 10:56 p.m., Kenny came out. He looked different. Not sick. Just calm. Too calm. He carried a duffel bag, slung over one shoulder, then tossed it into the back of his truck. Inside the house, a light flicked on, and Aiden saw it. A flash of something metallic inside the bag. He couldn't be sure. But it looked like the corner of a gun case. Kenny got into his truck and drove off. Aiden followed. The truck didn't go far, a rundown storage facility just off Route 12. Kenny punched in a code, drove in, and disappeared behind a sliding bay door. Aiden waited 5 minutes. Then got out. By the time he reached the unit, Kenny was gone. But the door? Still cracked open. Inside, it smelled like oil, wood, and something faintly metallic. There were shelves. Lockboxes. A bulletproof vest hanging from a rusted hook. And a file box. Aiden opened it. The top folder read, Fields, Darius, closed. He flipped it open. The autopsy. Photos. Crime scene notes. But they were wrong. The report said the bullet entered from the front. The photos clearly showed a backwound. Aiden's pulse spiked. Below that file was another. This one labeled, MJ. Maya Jenkins. Inside were surveillance printouts, grainy stills of her from different days, different places. Notes in the margins. Lives alone. No immediate family. Last contact, D.T. Ross. His own name was underlined. Then, a list. 4 names. Darius Fields. Andre Vickers. Angela Cooper. Maya Jenkins. 3 of them were crossed out. Only Maya's name was left. And scribbled next to hers, in shaky ink, was one final note. She knows. Shut it down. A creak behind him. Aiden spun. Nothing. He grabbed the folders and ran. He didn't just have suspicions now. He had proof someone was tying up loose ends. And Maya? She was the last one on the list. By sunrise, Aiden Ross was sitting in a cramped diner off the highway, a black coffee growing cold in front of him. The folder lay flat on the table. His fingers hovered over it, but his mind was elsewhere. 3 names were crossed out. 3 people dead. 1 missing. And a conspiracy buried so deep it had begun long before Maya Jenkins walked into that precinct. He needed someone who knew how to dig up old rot, someone who had nothing to lose. So, he called her. Naomi Grace. Ex-journalist. Ex-friend. Ex-everything. She used to cover police corruption until her younger brother, Liam, vanished. Liam was 17. Last seen at a bus stop in a neighborhood police had written off long ago. He was never found. That was 4 years ago. Naomi never forgave Aiden for staying silent back then. But when she heard Maya's name and the list he'd uncovered, her voice cracked for the first time in years. "Where did you get that list?" she asked. "From a cop storage unit," he said. "One of ours." "You're telling me my brother's name might have been on one of those lists?" Aiden was quiet. He slid the folder across the table. Naomi opened it. And there it was, a 5th name written in faded ink beneath Maya's. Liam Grace. But unlike the others, his name wasn't crossed out. Instead, next to it, initial test. Uncooperative. Facility, 7B. Naomi looked up, her eyes wide. Facility 7B? That's not a precinct. "No," Aiden said. "That's a private holding facility. Used to be a juvenile rehab center." Shut down years ago. No, it wasn't, she whispered. It just changed hands. She was already pulling up an old article on her phone. Allenton Youth Detention Center. Rebranded in 2019. Now owned by a private security firm under contract with the city. Aiden stared. What if Liam didn't disappear? Naomi said, breathless. What if he was taken? Aiden felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. Because if Liam Grace had been kept hidden, then maybe Maya Jenkins wasn't dead. Not yet. But time was running out. The Allenton Youth Detention Center, now referred to in whispers as Facility 7B, sat at the end of an overgrown service road, hidden behind a curtain of black pines and rusting chain link. It had been officially closed in 2017 following reports of unsafe conditions and staff misconduct. But it never really shut down. Not completely. Aiden and Naomi arrived just before dusk. Aiden had brought his badge, but he knew it would be useless here. This wasn't an official site. It was a place the city pretended didn't exist anymore, a shadow built for secrets too big for daylight. They parked in the trees and approached on foot. The building looked dead from the outside, windows boarded, grass waist high. But when they reached the side entrance, Naomi noticed something strange. A keypad. Brand new. Why would a condemned building need a digital lock? She asked. Aiden didn't answer. He reached into his coat, pulled out a small tool, and started unscrewing the panel. It sparked once, then clicked. The door opened. And they stepped into silence. Inside, the walls were painted gray and the air smelled of bleach and iron. Old cell doors lined the hall, their locks removed but hinges still squealing when touched. Naomi swept her flashlight across the corridor. That's when she saw it. Cell 11B, freshly painted, unlike the others. The door was bolted from the outside. Aiden moved fast, unhooked the latch, and pulled it open. Empty. But the cot was made. A tray of food, half-eaten, sat in the corner. Still warm. Someone had been here. Recently. Then they heard the voice. Weak. Shaky. Help? It came from the next cell. Aiden rushed to it, cell 12B, and pried it open. Inside, huddled on the floor, was a girl. Frail. Dirty. Eyes wide with fear. It wasn't Maya. It was Angela Cooper, the woman from the list who'd been presumed dead after a car accident 2 years ago. Except now she was here. Alive. Barely. Aiden fell to his knees. Angela? It's okay. You're safe now. She flinched. Naomi stepped in, her voice soft. Do you remember Liam Grace? Angela looked up. Her lips trembled. They hurt him. Made him disappear. He wouldn't do what they wanted. Who? Aiden pressed. Who did this to you? Angela's face contorted with fear. Then she whispered. Someone on the inside. High up. They called him the architect. Said he builds cases and buries people. Aiden and Naomi exchanged a glance. Because the architect wasn't just a nickname. It was the code name used on internal memos for a former chief investigator in Allenton. A man still pulling strings behind the curtain. And if he was real, he was the one who had Maya. Angela Cooper was too weak to walk, but her memory was razor sharp. The trauma hadn't dulled her recollection, it had branded it into her. He wore a badge, but he wasn't a cop. He gave orders. Everyone listened. He said people like me were easy to erase. Said they'd never look for us because we didn't matter. She described a tall man. Always in gray. Smooth voice. No name, just the architect. But Aiden Ross didn't need more detail. He already knew who it was. Deputy Commissioner Harold Baines. His former mentor. A man who once lectured about controlled narratives and public palatability. A man who disappeared from public view right around the time Maya Jenkins went missing. Aiden remembered a conversation from years ago, when Liam Grace first vanished. He'd questioned why the department hadn't followed up harder. Baines had waved it off. Sometimes, Officer Ross, a name slips through. A crack in the pavement. Don't lose sleep over it. Now Aiden realized. Baines had created the cracks. and filled them with people. Angela's testimony gave them enough to pull official property records. Naomi found a shell company registered under the name Arrow Spire Holdings, the listed owner of the former juvenile facility. Arrow Spire had one board member, H. Baines. The architect wasn't a ghost. He was hiding in plain sight. They tracked his last known residence to a luxury apartment downtown, secured by private security and surveillance. Naomi argued they should gather more evidence, go to someone outside the department. Aiden shook his head. There's no one outside, he said. Baines made sure of that. They didn't go through the front door. They went through the fire escape. Naomi hacked the door panel using a brute force app. Aiden covered the hallway. They reached the penthouse in silence. But when they opened the door, the apartment was empty. Pristine. Too pristine. No signs of recent life. Then Naomi found the room. Behind a bookcase, a locked chamber filled with drives, photos, and a map of the city with red pins scattered across low-income neighborhoods. Under the map was a manifesto. Typed. Signed only as a safer city requires silent sacrifices. Naomi picked up a folder labeled, Project Null. Inside, profiles. Maya Jenkins. Liam Grace. Angela Cooper. And dozens of others. All tagged with a single word. Unseen. Suddenly, Aiden's phone vibrated. Blocked number. He answered. The voice was calm. Smooth. Detective Ross. You've gone off script. Baines. A low chuckle. You always wanted to save people. Noble. But you're playing a game you don't understand. I build the narrative. You're just a sentence. Aiden stepped toward the window. You're done. Am I? The voice said. You're in my house. With stolen intel. I wonder what internal affairs will say when they find your fingerprints on a conspiracy. The line went dead. And then, the apartment alarms began blaring. They'd been framed. The alarms screamed like sirens from hell. Aiden's instincts kicked in. He yanked Naomi by the arm and pulled her toward the service exit. The penthouse doors slammed open behind them. 3 uniformed men in black rushed in. Hands in the air. Now. But Aiden wasn't about to be the fall guy for Baines's cover-up. Not now. Not after everything. He fired a flashbang from his belt, stolen from evidence lockers weeks ago, just in case this exact moment came. Boom. White light. Screams. He and Naomi bolted down the stairwell, 10 floors, past fire extinguishers and wall-mounted cameras. Naomi ripped the drives from her backpack and tossed 2 decoys in a trash chute. Let them chase ghosts, she muttered, panting. They burst into the alleyway, just as police sirens howled closer. They needed to vanish. And they knew exactly where to go. 3 hours later, an abandoned laundromat, East Side. Aiden and Naomi regrouped in a basement under the old laundromat that Liam Grace once managed part-time, a place he'd converted into a makeshift music studio before he disappeared. No one had touched it since. The smell of mildew and rust clung to the walls, but it was safe. For now. Naomi hooked the remaining drives into a decrypted laptop and began scanning. Each folder revealed a deeper horror. A video footage of illegal detentions at Facility 7B. Coerced confessions. Falsified psychiatric reports. Her entire family's pressured into silence. And then, Aiden, Naomi said, voice trembling. I found Maya. She turned the screen. A grainy video. Timestamped just 6 days after Maya walked into the precinct. She was in a cold interrogation room, alone. Pale. Confused. A voice behind the camera asked, do you consent to voluntary relocation for the good of community stability? Maya didn't respond. They repeated the question. She finally whispered, I don't understand. Then the video cut out. Aiden's chest tightened. That was the last trace of her. No more files. No clue where she went next. But Naomi wasn't done. The drives were cleaned recently. That means they're still active. And I traced one IP ping to a location across the city, a private wellness center. Name? Naomi hesitated. Eden Park Institute. Aiden blinked. That's a psych facility. A fake one, Naomi said. It doesn't accept walk-ins. Doesn't bill insurance. No patients ever come out. They looked at each other. Then packed up. Midnight, outside Eden Park Institute. The center was surrounded by gardens and thick iron gates. Security cameras everywhere. White coats moved through windows like ghosts. Aiden scoped the perimeter through binoculars. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A video appeared instantly. It was Maya. She was seated in a sterile white room, wearing hospital scrubs. Her eyes were glassy. To my family, if you see this. I'm sorry. I'm safe. Please stop looking. Then the screen went black. Aiden froze. It wasn't just a cover-up anymore. It was conditioning. Maya wasn't just being held. She was being rewritten. Eden Park Institute didn't look like a prison. It looked like a retreat, polished floors, soft lighting, peaceful ambient music flowing from unseen speakers. But the tranquility was artificial, like a smile hiding a scream. Aiden and Naomi had broken in through a ventilation shaft under the western annex. It was tight and sweltering. The sound of their breath echoed with every inch forward. Inside, they found themselves behind a wall of frosted glass in the east wing. Through the glass, they watched orderly staff glide through silent corridors in white coats, not doctors. Enforcers. Their movements were too calculated. Too military. Naomi pointed to a glowing panel on the wall. Facility access levels. Each wing of Eden Park had a classification. Maya's name had been listed under Conditioning, Sector C. But that section was locked behind biometric ID, not just fingerprints, but retinal scans. They had one chance. Naomi pulled a stun device from her coat. We grab an ID. Get inside. Find Maya. No matter what. Sector C, the conditioning hall. Once inside, the tone changed. Soft lights gave way to stark fluorescent panels. The air smelled like ammonia and despair. The walls were lined with rooms, each like a hospital suite, but with two-way mirrors, restraint bars, and speakers embedded in the ceiling. Whispers floated through the hallway. You made the world unsafe. You agreed to disappear. Your voice is a threat. The recordings repeated, over and over. Repetition therapy. Psychological erasure. Naomi's eyes scanned each room. Room 18. Maya. She sat on the edge of the bed, wearing a paper-thin gown, eyes vacant. Her lips moved slightly, reciting something inaudible. Aiden pushed forward but Naomi grabbed his arm. Wait. They're motion sensors. You trigger that, the whole place goes full lockdown. She pulled a modified RFID blocker from her bag and slid it under the frame. A moment later, click, the door disengaged. They stepped inside. The reunion. Maya. She flinched at the name, like it was foreign. Her head tilted slowly, her gaze landing on Aiden. For a long second nothing. Then, a flicker. Aiden? It was barely audible. He dropped to his knees in front of her. You're safe now. We're getting you out. She blinked. Her hands trembled. They said I was a ghost. That no one would ever find me. You were never gone, Naomi said softly. They just hid you. But as Aiden reached for her arm, the alarm sounded. A red strobe bathed the hallway. Security had found them. The escape. Naomi shoved a flash charge into the corridor. Boom. Smoke and chaos. Aiden carried Maya over his shoulder as Naomi guided them through side exits and emergency tunnels all mapped out on the stolen facility plans. But the Eden Park guards were trained for this. They met resistance at the outer courtyard, 3 men in black with batons and tasers. Aiden ducked behind a marble pillar, shielding Maya. Naomi leapt across a hedge wall and dropped one with a shock rod. A second guard lunged. Aiden threw a brick, hitting him in the knee, and tackled him before he could recover. The third guard fired a taser. It hit Aiden square in the side. He screamed, body convulsing, but he didn't fall. He gritted through it, teeth clenched, and kept running. 3 hours later, safe house. Maya was finally out. But she wasn't the same. She stared at the walls, whispering things no one could understand. She ate in silence. Slept with the lights on. Jumped at footsteps. Naomi said softly, "They didn't just hide her. They rewired her." Aiden looked down at Maya's hands. She was clutching something. A drawing. Childlike. Scribbled in pencil. A courthouse. And a hidden room beneath it. There were names scribbled inside. One of them was Liam Grace. Another was Angela Cooper. And at the bottom, a name circled in red. Subject 0, E. Bennett. The drawing in Maya's hands felt like a map from a broken mind, disjointed, scribbled, and childlike, but Aiden knew better than to dismiss it. She had remembered something real. Something buried. At the center of the paper, just beneath a crude sketch of the downtown courthouse, was a dark square labeled "Below," and 3 haunting words. "They watched us." Naomi scanned the sketch and cross-referenced it with the building's blueprints. "There's no record of any sub-basement or chamber like this." Aiden nodded. "Which means it's exactly where we need to go." 2 nights later, 3:12 a.m. Dressed in janitor uniforms with forged badges, Aiden and Naomi slipped into the courthouse through a back entrance. Naomi disabled the CCTV feed while Aiden guided them past metal detectors and night patrol. The building was silent, echoing with its own ghosts. Courtroom 3B. That's where Maya's sketch pointed them. Under the judge's bench was a locked panel. To any outsider, it looked like nothing more than maintenance access, but Naomi saw the seam in the paneling. She pulled a thermal scanner from her tool bag. "It's hollow. There's a whole chamber beneath this bench." Aiden wedged a crowbar into the side and popped the panel free. Beneath was a narrow steel stairway, old and rusted, descending into darkness. They didn't hesitate. The hidden room. It smelled like mildew and secrets. The concrete chamber below the courthouse was roughly 20 feet wide, lit only by Aiden's flashlight. Along the far wall were dozens of shelves filled with black binders, tagged with dates and initials. Naomi ran her fingers across them. These are files on every victim listed as unseen. Maya, Liam, Angela. All their names were here, with psychological assessments, interrogation transcripts, even surveillance logs. And then Aiden found a separate folder. Labeled, Subject 0, E. Bennett. Inside were photos, a young woman, eyes terrified. Newspaper clippings of a civil rights protest. A court document with charges that had been sealed. She was the first, Aiden whispered. The first to vanish. 1983. The report said she had been arrested on false charges, held without trial, and then declared mentally unfit. All records of her case had been erased. Except down here. Naomi flipped through the rest of the files and froze. "Aiden, look at this." It was a confession. Not from a victim, but from a judge. Typed. Signed. Dated. An affidavit describing a secret deal between high-ranking officials, including Baines, to neutralize certain cases that posed public image risks, particularly involving minority suspects. The document even named the location of the initial trials, all conducted secretly, without juries. This is a genocide on paper," Naomi muttered. And then they heard it. A soft hum. Followed by a click. The wall behind them began to move. The vault. A metal door hissed open, revealing another room. Inside, monitors. Hard drives. A still-running server system with live security feeds. Naomi's eyes widened. They're still watching. Still operating. On one of the screens was Maya, sleeping in the safe house. They hadn't escaped. They'd only peeled back the first layer. And at the center of it all, one folder stood out on the server. Project Helix. Aiden clicked it open. And froze. Oh my God. Inside were files on judges, lawyers, cops, hundreds of officials, listed by rank and status. Each tagged as either asset, passive, or at risk. His own name was there. Aiden Ross, at risk. And Naomi, tagged the same. "They're not just watching victims," Naomi whispered. "They're watching everyone." Back at the safe house. When Aiden and Naomi returned, they found Maya trembling in a corner. She pointed to the TV. He was on the news, the man who hurt me. He's running for state office. Naomi turned up the volume. On screen, flanked by smiling supporters, was Harold Baines. "We must restore law and order," he said. "By any means necessary." Aiden clenched his fists. "He's going public. Trying to rewrite the story before we can." Naomi looked at the server data they'd copied. "We have everything. Names, crimes, files. But if we release it too soon, they'll bury us before anyone believes it." Aiden nodded. "Then we don't release it. Until we make sure the world is watching." The air in the safe house was heavy with tension. The files they had copied from Eden Park and the courthouse vault were damning. Names, signatures, classified confessions, decades of illegal detentions, psychological manipulation, and state-sponsored cover-ups. And the man behind much of it, Harold Baines, was about to be sworn in as state attorney general. They had 6 days until inauguration. The plan. Naomi stood over a cluttered table covered in hard drives, flash sticks, and sticky notes. "We don't just leak it, we broadcast it. Live. Global." Aiden raised an eyebrow. "Through what? We don't have a platform big enough." But Naomi did. She had once worked for TruthLink, an underground journalism network known for hacking news stations to force-feed critical footage during national events. They had gone dark after the FBI raid in 2021, but Naomi still had contacts. And one of them, Jackal, owed her a favor. "If we hit the network during the inauguration, every screen in the country will see it. Phones, TVs, everything." Aiden paced. "That kind of move paints a target on our backs." Naomi stared at him. "We're already targets." Meanwhile, Baines' office. Harold Baines' fingers drummed against his desk as he watched a silent video feed of Aiden and Naomi loading equipment into a van. "They have the files," an agent said. "We can confirm they breached Eden Park and the courthouse chamber." Baines didn't blink. "Then activate Tier 3. I always want eyes on them." "And the girl?" the agent asked. Baines leaned back, cold. "If she talks, we bury her. Like we did the rest." 2 days before inauguration, Maya began to speak. It wasn't full sentences yet, but images. Memories. Names. "There was a room with mirrors, a man in gloves, he said I'd never be believed." Naomi gently held her hand. "You're not alone anymore. And they're going to hear you." They gave Maya a choice: speak anonymously, or show her face to the world. Her answer: "They stole my voice. I'm taking it back." Aiden's chest tightened. She was ready. The broadcast, Inauguration Day. 11:56 a.m. As Baines stepped onto the Capitol steps, hand raised to take his oath, the giant screen behind him flickered. At first, confusion. Then static. Then a voice, Maya's, filled the airwaves. "My name is Maya Brooks. I disappeared 2 years ago. I was declared mentally unfit and held underground in a facility no one was supposed to know existed." Gasps rippled through the crowd. TV anchors stuttered. Phones buzzed wildly. On the screen, images cycled, files, surveillance stills, secret court records, torture logs. The subject: zero file. The judge's confession. The hidden chamber beneath the courthouse. The final image was a rotating list of names, victims who had been silenced, erased, institutionalized. "They called us ghosts," Maya said, voice shaking. "But ghosts can haunt." Chaos erupts. Within 10 minutes, the press was storming the stage. Protesters flooded the steps. Baines was rushed off by security, face pale. But it was too late. The footage had already gone viral. Multiple state attorneys demanded an immediate investigation. Congress members called for emergency hearings. And for the first time in decades, Eden Park Institute was raided. Dozens of missing persons were recovered. 3 weeks later, Aiden and Naomi sat across from a federal tribunal. They had turned over everything. But they refused immunity. "We did what your system wouldn't," Aiden told them. "We told the truth. Maya testified in person. She stood before a packed courtroom, facing Baines, who had been arrested days earlier. "You told me no one would believe me," she said, her voice clear. "But I'm still here." 6 months late. Maya now worked with victims of wrongful incarceration. Naomi published a best-selling memoir, The Room Beneath the Bench. Aiden took no spotlight. He disappeared from public view, his mission complete. But sometimes, Naomi would get an email with no name, just a photo of a recovered victim, and 2 words. Another one. If you enjoyed this episode of Chase Studio Stories, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue to share impactful and meaningful content.